And I just got a phone call. And it was like, I think it was like that for everyone. It was just so horrific. You couldn't take it in, and I couldn't take it in. When people think of Paul McCartney, they often picture a legend with a friendly smile and timeless hits. But in reality, he is someone deeply vulnerable and extremely sensitive to criticism. In an interview, Paul McCartney revealed a personal blacklist, a group of people he has despised for life. Among them, a soulmate who turned his back on him for the sake of a woman, a music legend who dared to strip him of his songs, a deranged murderer, and a financial fox who dragged the legendary band into collapse. Who were these faces, and why had McCartney never revealed this list until now? Paul McCartney was born in 1942 into a working-class family. The sudden death of his mother from breast cancer when he was only 14 left a deep scar, but it also sparked his love for music, a way to heal from loss. In 1957, Paul met John Lennon. They quickly became close, and together with George Harrison and Ringo Starr formed the legendary band The Beatles. Within the group, Paul played bass, sang lead vocals, and was one of the two primary songwriters. Over more than 60 years, Paul McCartney not only became a world-famous musician, but also one of the richest figures in the music industry, with an estimated fortune of over $1 billion. In 1997, he was knighted by the Queen of England. Yet, behind that dazzling success lay shadows. Paul McCartney was infamous for being difficult and a relentless perfectionist, often forcing the band to re-record a passage dozens of times. His strictness helped the Beatles create immortal works, but it also bred resentment. George Harrison once stormed out in anger, while John Lennon openly mocked Paul in his song How Do You Sleep? McCartney never hid his ambition. He wanted to be seen as equal to, if not greater than, Lennon. That drive earned him the reputation of having a big ego and being calculating. If Lennon was the dreamer and rebel, McCartney was the pragmatist, focused on business and music rights. This practical side gave him a career that endured for decades, but also made him a thorn in the side of many fellow musicians. To the public, Paul McCartney has always been the friendly Beatle. But behind the spotlight, he is a man deeply sensitive and vulnerable to criticism. He once sank into depression, drank heavily, and at times felt so broken he couldn't even write music. These scars made him retreat inward, rarely speaking of personal conflicts for decades. Yet, recently in a candid conversation with the press, McCartney admitted for the first time he truly has a list of famous people he absolutely despises. That list, in his words, is nothing less than the wounds in his life that never healed. 1. Michael Jackson. The betrayal from a fellow brother. In the early 1980s, Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson were an unlikely pair of friends. They were very close, often talking and collaborating. At the time, McCartney saw Michael as a younger brother, and Jackson looked up to Paul as a veteran in the industry. During one of their conversations, McCartney shared a secret to success in the music industry with Michael Jackson invest in song copyrights. He told him that he had bought the rights to a number of works by other authors, and as a result had a steady source of income. No one expected Michael Jackson to do the same thing, but in a way that would stun McCartney. In 1985, ATV Music, the company that owned most of the Beatles' song copyrights, was put up for sale. Jackson, who was at the peak of his career, had enough money and decided to make a move. For about $47.5 million, Michael Jackson officially acquired this massive music catalog. For McCartney, this was nothing short of a stab in the back. He felt betrayed because he was the one who had advised Michael to invest in copyrights, and he never expected this king of pop to apply the advice to take over the Beatles' legacy. After the tense transaction, the relationship between McCartney and Jackson fractured. Later, when Michael faced financial difficulties, many expected him to sell the Beatles' copyrights back to McCartney, but that never happened. In fact, Jackson even partnered with Sony, continuing to hold the catalog for many years afterward. For McCartney, this was one of the biggest mistakes of his life. His once beautiful friendship with Michael Jackson ended in bitterness, and Paul has never forgiven him for it. Later, in many interviews, McCartney stated directly that he felt betrayed. "I thought we were friends, but then Michael turned it into a business deal." That stab in the back ended a beautiful friendship, but it was just the beginning of a list of deep cracks in Paul McCartney's life. Because if Michael Jackson was a shock, the next person was the pain of a brotherhood that turned into a public battle for the whole world to see. 2. John Lennon. From soulmate to public enemy on live TV, Paul McCartney and John Lennon were kindred spirits, co-writing over 200 timeless songs together. The Lennon-McCartney formula became iconic, even though in reality many songs were primarily written by one person. But from the mid-1960s, the distance between them grew. Lennon hated the sweet image that McCartney was building, while McCartney was annoyed by Lennon's wild lifestyle. When Brian Epstein, the Beatles' financial manager, passed away, the band immediately fell into chaos. McCartney wanted the band to continue seriously moving in a direction of great creativity. In contrast, Lennon was bored and wanted to break free from the Beatles to find his true self with Yoko Ono. This difference caused constant arguments between McCartney and Lennon. McCartney wanted to control the band's musical direction, while Lennon accused Paul of being an artistic dictator. George Harrison even once left a recording session because he couldn't stand McCartney's demands. The conflict reached its peak when the Beatles broke up. McCartney proactively sued the other members in court to dissolve the company Apple Corps. Lennon saw this as a betrayal. In 1971, Lennon wrote the song "How Do You Sleep" on the album Imagine. In it, he directly attacked McCartney. "The only thing you done was yesterday," alluding to Paul's reliance on his famous song Yesterday. Paul was deeply hurt. For years, he repeatedly mentioned this song in interviews with bitterness. He said it was painful to hear John sing that. Afterward, McCartney also retaliated with songs like "Too Many People," which included a subtle jab at Lennon and Yoko. "You took your lucky break and broke it in two." But fate is ironic, the taunt still echoed while the chance for reconciliation slowly faded. And then, before McCartney could even say a word of forgiveness, a gunshot in New York forever took Lennon's life, simultaneously closing the last door to reconciliation. 3. Mark David Chapman. The one who took Lennon and severed all chances for the Beatles' reconciliation. On December 8, 1980, a grim cloud hung over New York as John Lennon was assassinated right in front of the Dakota Building where he lived with Yoko Ono. The perpetrator, Mark David Chapman, was a 25-year-old man who was once a fan of the Beatles, but had a disturbed mind and a morbid obsession with Lennon. That morning, Chapman quietly waited outside. When Lennon left for the recording studio, Chapman handed him the album Double Fantasy to sign. John smiled, signed it, and left completely unaware that a few hours later, that very hand would pull the trigger. Around 10 p.m., when Lennon and Yoko returned, Chapman was hiding in the shadows. As soon as John stepped inside the doorway, he pulled out a handgun and fired 5 shots in quick succession, or hit Lennon in the back. Blood stained the Dakota steps. John Lennon collapsed in Yoko's arms, only able to utter, "I've been shot." Mark David Chapman stood there, opened his copy of The Catcher in the Rye, and waited for the police to arrest him. When he heard that John Lennon had died, Paul McCartney was in a state of shock. As he left the recording studio, reporters surrounded McCartney, thrusting microphones into his face and shouting, "Paul, what do you think about John being shot?" Paul McCartney was flustered, but he didn't want to cry on camera. He stammered out a short, simple sentence. "It's a drag." That statement immediately caused a storm. Headlines screamed McCartney's cold reaction to Lennon's death. Many fans were outraged, accusing Paul of being cold and gloating over Lennon's death. In reality, there were still unhealed cracks between him and John. Lennon had written songs to mock McCartney, and Paul often complained about being looked down upon by John. However, despite their conflicts, Paul still considered John his only creative brother. That's why Lennon's death didn't just take away a friend, it also took away their last chance to reconcile. Paul once said in an interview, "Mark Chapman didn't just kill John, he stole a piece of the Beatles' soul. He ended any hope that we could sit down together." For decades, McCartney never mentioned Chapman's name normally. He called him a coward, a damned psycho. Every time the Beatles